Now, why Teams? I think it's important to understand why Teams and what it brings. And Microsoft is really the hub for teamwork. Well, Microsoft Teams is. And it forms part of the Microsoft 365 stack. Microsoft has just renamed a few of their products, dropping the Office part of 365, and they've actually started calling it Microsoft 365 because it's really about a holistic approach to your IT stack and how humans interact with technology. I think they used to call it human interface computing, and Teams is the poster child for how humans are now starting to interact with what I like to call work objects. In the old days, we used to have the 3 Ps, and we always talked about 3 Ps: people, process, and paper. And back then, I think it was 2003 when I got involved in knowledge management solutions, we talked about people, process, and work objects, be it a Excel spreadsheet, be it a Word document, or be it a presentation like the one that you are consuming today. It's really about how do we provide people in our organization with a platform for working more efficiently with the processes and the work objects that they're actually touching, be it an audio transcript of a recording, be it pictures of something that happened. There's a plethora of ways of working with tools, with products inside of your organization, and also the objects that you need to work with every day. And Microsoft provides that functionality through the use of Microsoft Teams. First and foremost, we all used to what I like to call chat-based information management. If you do not have a chat app on your phone, how are you communicating? My 84-year-old mother is on Facebook, and she's on Facebook out of necessity. She's never needed a smartphone, but about 2 years ago, she said, "Al, can you please give me a phone with a touchscreen?" because she wanted to track my movements on Facebook. And she learned how to send SMSs using WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger and all of those tools. So that's the first thing. So how do we communicate more efficiently inside of the organization, not only from a one-to-many, but from a one-to-one perspective? And if you look at Microsoft Teams being the hub for teamwork, it's really around that, working inside of a team. So the first protocol we have is how we manage chats, how people can utilize the tooling to actually have conversations with not only their team, but also with individual stakeholders inside of the organization. The next thing is really about having meetings. So how do teams communicate more efficiently inside of the organization? And Teams is the perfect platform for today's world. Anyone can connect to a meeting using their standard webcam. Generally, I think for the last 10 years, most notebooks have shipped with webcams. And for me, I like to switch my webcam on. Everyone's afraid of switching on their webcam because you don't know if they're working in PJs. In today's world, I suppose a lot of people are working in their PJs. We've seen quite a few videos of hosts and anchors of news shows where their kids have walked past or something weird. So be very wary when you actually connect via Teams in a Teams meeting and you're switching your webcam on. The next thing, you can use Teams for calling, and we'll delve into direct routing and how to configure calling plans for Microsoft Teams later on in this presentation. And naturally, being able to conversate and communicate with not only your teams, but with also individual stakeholders, it's important to be able to share files that you are working with. And Microsoft has brought the rich files experience from a product like SharePoint and OneDrive into the Teams view. So now you are able to collaborate, communicate, and co-author content inside of your organization using Teams, where 2 people can actually work inside of Teams on the same document. They have the same experience as if they were editing a document on their local Office Pro Plus application like Word or PowerPoint or Excel, and they get the same user experience and the same fidelity that they would if they were working with online versions of Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. And also, you don't need the Teams thick client to work with Teams. You can actually use Teams inside of a browser. It's supported by Safari, it's supported by Chrome, it's supported by Microsoft Edge or the new Chromium, and you can actually work with Teams as if it was actually on your desktop. Last but not least, it's always important to have a look at what the app ecosystem and what the process management is sitting behind a product like Microsoft Teams. And what Microsoft has actually done, for the longest time they've been working with building a single API. So you tap into the Office Graph API, and you can start building applications. Those SharePoint developers that are still out there, they can now build rich applications using the same SharePoint framework and publish it to teams. And what you can also do is bring in a plethora of external apps, the way you'd normally do it with products like Slack. There's an app connector, and there's a bunch of published apps that now actually sit in the Teams App Store. So not only can you get your developers in your organization to create these applications, you can use third-party apps like Asana, Trello, the old Wanderlust, which is not to do. And there is, I think, about 200 or 300 applications available to teams right now. And it's the top 200-300 applications that products like Slack use. That's now available to you. And you can actually surface that directly inside of Teams. And your users no longer have to alt-tab into another application, have to log in with those credentials and all of those things. They can actually surface that application and, and you can pass through your authentication to that application for seamless single sign-on. What else can teams do for your business? I think the first thing is to talk about transforming your workplace and transforming the way you collaborate. You can now share content more efficiently because it's actually stuck inside of Teams. And Teams is part of the Office 365 tenant, and it utilizes all the back-end components of Office 365. The membership service is Office 365 groups. For those that have worked with groups inside of Exchange, it's the same thing. So users that live inside of Office 365 groups have the specific permissions to that specific team. And that is the way you manage permissions and being able to transform the way you collaborate now. So think about the old days, right? You would dial into a meeting using Skype or Zoom or Cisco WebEx, and you'd have a conversation about a document, and then you'd have to email that document to everyone later, and there'd be 12 versions of it, and no one would know what the latest version of the truth is. Working inside of Microsoft Teams, you can now provide users with features like co-authoring, where everyone works on the same document at the same time, and you can track the changes and all of those things. And that's vitally important when it comes to working with a product like Teams for improving your collaboration inside of the organization. The opportunity cost it takes to perform a specific task in your organization. And that ties into business processes and how to become more efficient utilizing Teams to streamline process management inside of your organization. And if you look at the rest of the tools that's available to you as part of Office 365, because Teams is an Office 365 product, you can now surface all those applications like Planner so that you can do proper task management. You can now use products like Power Automate, Power Apps. You can also use Power BI to surface rich information around dashboarding and balanced scorecards. You can automate your processes using Power Automate. So think about approval processes around, I want to publish a document that needs to go out to a customer. I can now add it to, and I prefer to call it Microsoft Flow. I can add it to a flow, and that then goes off to my line manager, and my line manager approves the document, and that document then gets sent to the customer. So there's a lot of ways of utilizing the tool, not just for chat, but also for working with processes inside of your organization. And what Microsoft likes to talk about Teams being, and I call it the everything source, right? Because Microsoft has been touting it as the single pane of glass. This is your new digital dashboard. And this is the new front door into your organization. And I think it's very important that we have a look at that and how organizations are working with Microsoft Teams, as that's the doorway into our back-end ecosystem, where all our applications reside, where all our communication tools reside. It's how we consume information, and it's how we produce information. And it's one single platform that talks to pretty much all Office 365 products. So you surface Office Pro Plus, well, the online versions of Office Pro Plus. So you surface Word, you surface PowerPoint, you surface Excel inside of Teams. It gives you that view. you use Planner, you use OneNote for note-taking, you use Microsoft Whiteboard, you use SharePoint for file storage, you use OneDrive to sync that file back to your desktop if you want to work in Windows Explorer. You then use Power BI inside of Teams to surface rich analytics of your back-end ERP or supply chain management system. And lastly, you use Office 365 groups to manage your permissions. And that's the total sum pretty much. I mean, with the exception of Microsoft Forms, that pretty much covers the stack of Office 365 applications. And it's definitely the single platform into all of the other products that you have in the backend. And what this means to us when we start working with these applications, be it on your desktop, be it inside of a browser, or be it on a phone or a tablet, you get exactly the same experience that you would normally have inside of the Teams application on all your devices throughout your organization. So people don't only have to be reliant on having to open up a desktop machine or open up a laptop to work with the tooling. You can now work with it on the go. Not that anyone's going to go anywhere besides their patio or the garden for 27,000 laps that you can get 5 kilometers, do a 5 kilometer run. But you can use any tool, product, platform to consume this information, be it a laptop, be it a mobile phone, or be it a tablet. It's available to everyone on any platform. And what's important to note, and this is probably where I spend most of my time working with these products, is because it's ring-fenced inside of Office 365, you get the richness of the security features available to you inside of Office 365. And no one really looks at that much. So they go, well, Teams. But for me, I'm always very wary of having to make sure that you close the gates behind people when it comes to being able to share content, because everyone that's ever used Dropbox will go, well, I'm going to share this file with you, right? And I'm going to right click and say share, and I'm going to send you the link. But who worries about that when it comes to your perimeter network? Because your perimeter network is no longer just that bricks and mortar and that VPN that people have been using to get inside of your building. It's now extended and it's sitting in the cloud. So your perimeter network's actually been extended to what's available to you in the cloud. And Microsoft provides you with a rich, I think they spend about, I think the last time I checked was $4 billion a year on security. And you get all of those features with Microsoft Teams. Being able to do retention and disposition scheduling when it comes to being able to delete files and delete teams, switching on data loss prevention for your organization, which includes Teams, making sure that documents are not shared with the wrong organizations or shared to a Gmail account through conditional access policies and information protection, and also making sure that Teams doesn't get infected with Trojans and viruses by using advanced threat protection inside of your Office 365 tenant. What's nice about that is Microsoft's actually split the security center. Well, it used to be called the Security and Compliance Center. They actually split it off into the Security Center and the Compliance Center. And now you've got stuff like a compliance score, you've also got a security score, and you've also got a productivity score, which you can use as metrics from an IT admin perspective to manage and measure what's happening with your team's infrastructure. So where are people sharing content? Who are they sharing it with? Is this at risk because you've got two different loggings, and we call that impossible travel as a policy, where someone logs in from where they are, and if their identity has been compromised, you might find that someone has got their identity and they're logging in from, and I always use the same example, a coffee shop in the Ukraine. And I know it sounds bad, but you'll be able to track usage and you'll be able to do predictive assessments of what might happen if an identity has been compromised. So what are organizations actually doing with this product out there? I mean, we want to compare it to how we live in South Africa, but I think it's important to understand where the world is going and what top brands are doing with the product. So here's a quick video on what L'Oreal is actually doing and utilizing with Microsoft Teams.
Our founder, Eugene Schuller, used to say, a company is more than just assets or equipment. It's first about people, people, and people. And I believe that this is truer than ever.
L'Oréal is reinventing itself all the time. We are in the business of beauty. We represent more than 43 international brands. We want the best for our employees.
The new way to manage innovation is to have real engaged communities bound by the same goal. We face the challenge to move faster and to innovate differently, and for that we rely on Microsoft Teams.
I'm in charge of all our e-commerce websites. Digital market is moving super fast. It's 24 hours every day. One of the big challenges that we have is that we're in a lot of different countries. What's hard is to make sure that you're collaborating flawlessly. Managing 7,000 assets, 200 videos, plus all the text. Having one solution to gather all this, plus to be able to communicate on those assets within Teams, that's a game changer for us, and it's making a big difference.
Microsoft 365 and Teams came perfectly at the right moment. It absolutely revolutionized the way we operate and also what we can offer to our consumers.
I think it's important, I hope you enjoyed that video. I think it's important to understand where Microsoft Teams has come from and where it's evolved. I mean, Microsoft Teams is about almost 3 years old. But it's interesting to see the growth at how fast Microsoft Teams has grown over the last 2 years. It was announced at Ignite 2018, and when you look at all the features that have been released over the last 2 years, is it 2 years? It's not even 2 years. Ignite 2018 was in September of 2018. So it's not even 18 months. Yeah, it's not even 18 months. And the product has come a long, long way. And what we're seeing now is when we look at what features are available to you today, you've got private channels. So you can create a team and you can have a private channel inside of a team. It was probably the most requested feature on user voice for all of Microsoft products with over 26,000 votes for it. You've got cross-channel posting, so you can literally select which channels to post to when you want to push information through. You've got an announcement section, you've also got priority notifications, and you've got read receipts inside of Teams. So if you wanted to see what people were doing, or if you're having a conversation with someone and you'll make sure that they've actually read it, you can now enable those features. What's coming, what's actually available right now, pin channels. The biggest problem with Teams currently is the plethora of teams and channels that get created, and for you to scroll through all the teams that you belong to when you only want to see information about a specific channel, you can now use pinned channels. A multi-window, being able to pop out a window, so you've got chat over here and then you've got video over there, that is coming. Message extensions, it's not yet available. Outlook and Teams integration, where you can actually email a team, which is quite cool. So think about being able to draft an email and then emailing it to a team and having that rich text HTML inside of Teams. You can now do that. Because a lot of the times, people don't necessarily work inside of Teams. They work inside of the application that they're happy with. So if they're creating a document in Windows Explorer, that's where they live. If they're working with documents inside of Outlook, you'll find that they'll mail a document to themselves because that's where they keep their documentation. You might find that people prefer to work in browser like most Google users, because that's where they find their word processing application, their spreadsheet application, and also their PowerPoint presentations or their presentation application. And working with Teams, we give you that functionality. What I really like and what's coming, I know that the new Yammer is in private preview currently, and it's probably releasing middle of the year, so Q4 for Microsoft. Having that Yammer experience now available to you inside of Teams for enterprise social is a big thing for everyone. And then last but not least, being able to roll up all your tasks inside of Teams. So managing tasks inside of Teams, be it an Outlook task, be it a Planner task, be it a SharePoint task, you now have a single pane for all your tasks inside of Teams. conversations about not only L'Oreal, but everyone else that's been working with Teams. And it's great to hear from Microsoft about what the other organizations are doing with Teams. And if you head over to Microsoft.com, just do a search for case studies, and you'll be able to find all this information around how other organizations in your specific industry vertical is using Microsoft Teams. And it's great to not be, everyone talks about early adopters versus the bell. I mean, we all know about the bell in the curve. Right now, we're trying to flatten the curve. And that's generally where I suppose, not generally, it's where the vast majority sits. Because bleeding edge, you usually bleed. That's why they call it bleeding edge. So when we look at what the rest of the world, because there's 42 million daily active users of Teams, there must be quite a few organizations that are using it efficiently and effectively. Go have a look at what organizations in your industry vertical are actually doing with Teams.